The Ganges, also Ganga, is a transboundary river of Asia which flows through the nations of India and Bangladesh. The 2,525 km river rises in the western Himalayas in the Indian state of Uttarakhand, and flows south and east through the Gangetic plain of North India into Bangladesh, where it empties into the Bay of Bengal. It is the third largest river in the world by discharge. The Ganges is the most sacred river to Hindus. It is also a lifeline to millions of Indians who live along its course and depend on it for their daily needs. It is worshipped as the goddess Ganga in Hinduism. It has also been important historically, with many former provincial or imperial capitals located on its banks. The Ganges was ranked as the fifth most polluted river of the world in 2007. Pollution threatens not only humans, but also more than 140 fish species, 90 amphibian species and the endangered Ganges river dolphin. The Ganga Action Plan, an environmental initiative to clean up the river, has been a major failure thus far due to corruption, lack of technical expertise, poor environmental planning, and lack of support from religious authorities. The name Ganges, ending in est, came to English via Latin from ancient Greek sources, particularly from accounts of Alexander the Great's wars, which entered India. Course. The Ganges begins at the confluence of the Bhagirathi and Alaknanda rivers. The Bhagirathi is considered to be the source in Hindu culture and mythology, although the Alaknanda is longer. The headwaters of the Alaknanda are formed by snowmelt from such peaks as Nanda Devi, Trisal, and Kamet. The Bhagirathi rises at the foot of Gangetic Glacier at Ganga, at an elevation of 3,892 meters, being mythologically referred to as residing in the matted locks of Shiva, symbolically Tapovan, being a meadow of ethereal beauty at the feet of Mount Shivling, just 5 kilometers away. Although many small streams comprise the headwaters of the Ganges, the 6 longest and the 5 confluences are considered sacred. The 6 head streams of the Alaknanda, Dali Ganga, Nandakini, Pinda, Mandakini, and Bhagirathi rivers. The 5 confluences, known as the Panchprayag, are all along the Alaknanda. They are, in downstream order, Vishnuprayag, where the Dali Ganga joins the Alaknanda, Nandprayag, where the Nandakini joins Karnaprayag, where the Pinda joins Rudraprayag, where the Mandakini joins, and finally, Devprayag, where the Bhagirathi joins the Alaknanda to form the Ganges River proper. After flowing 250 kilometers through its narrow Himalayan valley, the Ganges emerges from the mountains at Rishikesh, then debouches onto the Gangetic plain at the pilgrimage town of Haridwar. At Haridwar, a dam diverts some of its waters into the Ganges Canal, which irrigates the Doaba region of Uttar Pradesh, whereas the river, whose course has been roughly southwest until this point, now begins to flow southeast through the plains of northern India. The Ganges follows an 800-kilometer arching course passing through the cities of Kannauj, Farrukhabad, and Kanpur. Along the way it is joined by the Ramganga, which contributes an average annual flow of about 500 cubic meters per second. The Ganges joins the Yamuna at the Triveni Sangam at Allahabad, a holy confluence in Hinduism. At their confluence the Yamuna is larger than the Ganges, contributing about 2,950 cubic meters per second, or about 58.5% of the combined flow. Now flowing east, the river meets the Tamsa River, which flows north from the Kama Range and contributes an average flow of about 190 cubic meters per second. After the Tamsa, the Gomti River joins, flowing south from the Himalayas. The Gumti contributes an average annual flow of about 234 cubic meters per second. Then the Ganga River, also flowing south from the Himalayas of Nepal, joins. The Ganga, with its average annual flow of about 2,990 cubic meters per second, is the largest tributary of the Ganges. After the Ganga confluence, the Ganges is joined from the south by the Sun River, contributing about 1,000 cubic meters per second. The Gangetic River, then the Kosi River, joined from the north flowing from Nepal, contributing about 1,654 cubic meters per second and 2,166 cubic meters per second, respectively. The Kosi is the third largest tributary of the Ganges, after the Ganga and Yamuna. Along the way between Allahabad and Malda, West Bengal, the Ganges passes the towns of Chennai, Mirzapur, Varanasi, Ghazipur, Patna, Bhagalpur, Balia, Buxar, Simaria, Sultanganj, and Saidpur. At Bhagalpur, the river begins to flow south-southeast and it begins its attrition with the branching away of its first distributary, the Bhagirathi Hooghly, which goes on to become the Hooghly River. Just before the border with Bangladesh, the Farakka barrage controls the flow of the Ganges, diverting some of the water into a feeder canal linked to the Hooghly for the purpose of keeping it relatively silt-free. The Hooghly River is formed by the confluence of the Bhagirathi River and Jalangi River at Nabadwip, and Hooghly has a number of tributaries of its own. The largest is the Damodar River, which is 541 kilometers long, with a drainage basin of 25,820 square kilometers. The Hooghly River empties into the Bay of Bengal near Sagar Island. Between Malda and the Bay of Bengal, the Hooghly River passes the towns and cities of Murshidabad, Nabadwip, Kolkata and Howrah. After entering Bangladesh, the main branch of the Ganges is known as the Padma. The Padma is joined by the Jamuna River, the largest distributary of the Brahmaputra. Further downstream, the Padma joins the Meghna River, the second largest distributary of the Brahmaputra, and takes on the Meghna's name as it enters the Meghna estuary, which empties into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges Delta, formed mainly by the large sediment-laden flows of the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers, is the world's largest delta, at about 59,000 square kilometers. It stretches 322 kilometers along the Bay of Bengal. Only the Amazon and Congo rivers have a greater average discharge than the combined flow of the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, and the Meghna River system. In full flood only the Amazon is larger. Geology. The Indian subcontinent lies atop the Indian tectonic plate, a minor plate within the Indo-Australian plate. Its defining geological processes commenced 75 million years ago, when, as a part of the southern supercontinent Gondwana, it began a northeastwards drift, lasting 50 million years, across the then unformed Indian Ocean. The subcontinent's subsequent collision with the Eurasian plate and subduction under it gave rise to the Himalayas, the planet's highest mountain ranges. In the former seabed immediately south of the emerging Himalayas, plate movement created a vast trough, which, having gradually been filled with sediment borne by the Indus and its tributaries and the Ganges and its tributaries, now forms the Indo-Gangetic Plain. The Indo-Gangetic Plain is geologically known as a 4D perfolant basin. Hydrology. The hydrology of the Ganges River is very complicated, especially in the Ganges Delta region. One result is different ways to determine the river's length, its discharge, and the size of its drainage basin. The name Ganges is used for the river between the confluence of the Bhagirathi and Alaknanda rivers, in the Himalayas, and the India-Bangladesh border, near the Farakka barrage and the first bifurcation of the river. The length of the Ganges Ganges is frequently said to be slightly over 2,500 kilometers long, about 2,505 kilometers to 2,525 kilometers, or perhaps 2,550 kilometers. In these cases, the river's source is usually assumed to be the source of the Bhagirathi River, Gangetic glacier at Ganga, and its mouth being the mouth of the Meghna River on the Bay of Bengal. Sometimes the source of the Ganges is considered to be at Haridwar, where its Himalayan headwater streams debouch onto the Gangetic plain. In some cases, the length of the Ganges is given for its Hooghly River distributary, which is longer than its main outlet via the Meghna River, resulting in a total length of about 2,620 kilometers from the source of the Bhagirathi, or 2,135 kilometers from Haridwar to the Hooghly's mouth. In other cases, the length is said to be about 2,240 kilometers from the source of the Bhagirathi to the Bangladesh border, where its name changes to Padma. For similar reasons, sources differ over the size of the river's drainage basin. The basin covers parts of 4 countries: India, Nepal, China, and Bangladesh, 11 Indian states: Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, West Bengal, and the Union Territory of Delhi. The Ganges Basin, including the Delta but not the Brahmaputra and Meghna basins, is about 1,080,000 square kilometers, of which 861,000 square kilometers are in India, 140,000 square kilometers in Nepal, 46,000 square kilometers in Bangladesh, and 33,000 square kilometers in China. Sometimes the Ganges and Brahmaputra Meghna drainage basins are combined for a total of about 1,600,000 square kilometers, or 1,621,000 square kilometers. The combined Ganges-Brahmaputra Meghna basin drainage basin is spread across Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and China. The Ganges basin ranges from the Himalaya and the Trans-Himalaya in the north to the northern slopes of the Vindhya range in the south. For the eastern slopes of the Aravalli in the west to the Chota Nagpur Plateau and the Sundarbans Delta in the east. A significant portion of the discharge from the Ganges comes from the Himalayan mountain system. Within the Himalaya, the Ganges basin spreads almost 1,200 kilometers from the Yamuna Satluj divide along the Simla ridge forming the boundary with the Indus basin in the west, to the Singalila ridge along the Nepal-Sikkim border forming the boundary with the Brahmaputra basin in the east. This section of the Himalaya contains 9 of the 14 highest peaks in the world over 8,000 meters in height, including Mount Everest, which is the high point of the Ganges basin. The other peaks over 8,000 meters in the basin are Kangchenjunga, Lhotse, Makalu, Cho-Oyu, Dhaulagiri, Manaslu, Annapurna and Shishapangma. The Himalayan portion of the basin includes the southeastern portion of the state of Himachal Pradesh, the entire state of Uttarakhand, the entire country of Nepal and the extreme northwestern portion of the state of West Bengal. The discharge of the Ganges also differs by source. Frequently, discharge is described for the mouth of the Meghna River, thus combining the Ganges with the Brahmaputra and Meghna. This results in a total average annual discharge of about 38,000 cubic meters per second, or 42,470 cubic meters per second. In other cases, the average annual discharges of the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna are given separately, at about 16,650 cubic meters per second for the Ganges, about 19,820 cubic meters per per second for the Brahmaputra, and about 5,100 cubic meters per second for the Meghna. The maximum peak discharge of the Ganges, as recorded at Harding Bridge in Bangladesh, exceeded 70,000 cubic meters per second. The minimum recorded at the same place was about 180 cubic meters per second in 1997. The hydrologic cycle in the Ganges basin is governed by the southwest monsoon. About 84% of the total rainfall occurs in the monsoon from June to September. Consequently, stream flow in the Ganges is highly seasonal. The average dry season to monsoon discharge ratio is about 1:6, as measured at Harding Bridge. This strong seasonal variation underlies many problems of land and water resource development in the region. The seasonality of flow is so acute it can cause both drought and floods. Bangladesh, in particular, frequently experiences drought during the dry season and regularly suffers extreme floods during the monsoon. In the Ganges Delta, many large rivers come together, both merging and bifurcating in a complicated network of channels. The two largest rivers, the Ganges and Brahmaputra, both split into distributary channels, the largest of which merge with other large rivers before themselves joining. This current channel pattern was not always the case. Over time, the rivers in Ganges Delta have changed course, sometimes altering the network of channels in significant ways. Before the late 12th century, the Bhagirathi-Hooghly distributary was the main channel of the Ganges, and the Padma was only a minor spill channel. The main flow of the river reached the sea not via the modern Hooghly River but rather by the Adi Ganga. Between the 12th and 16th centuries, the Bhagirathi-Hooghly and Padma channels were more or less equally significant. After the 16th century, the Padma grew to become the main channel of the Ganges. It is thought that the Bhagirathi-Hooghly became increasingly choked with silt, causing the main flow of the Ganges to shift to the southeast and the Padma River. By the end of the 18th century, the Padma had become the main distributary of the Ganges. One result of this shift to the Padma was that the Ganges joined the Meghna and Brahmaputra rivers before emptying into the Bay of Bengal, together instead of separately. The present confluence of the Ganges and Meghna formed about 150 years ago. Also near the end of the 18th century, the course of the lower Brahmaputra changed dramatically, altering its relationship with the Ganges. In 1787 there was a great flood on the Titha River, which at the time was a tributary of the Ganges-Padma River. The flood of 1787 caused the Titha to undergo a sudden change course, shifting east to join the Brahmaputra and causing the Brahmaputra to shift its course south, cutting a new channel. This new main channel of the Brahmaputra is called the Jamuna River. It flows south to join the Ganges-Padma. Since ancient times, the main flow of the Brahmaputra was more easterly, passing by the city of Mymensingh and joining the Meghna River. Today this channel is a small distributary but retains the name Brahmaputra, sometimes Old Brahmaputra. The site of the old Brahmaputra-Meghna confluence, in the locality of Langalband, is still considered sacred by Hindus. Near the confluence is a major early historic site called Wari Bateshwar. History. The late Harappan period, about 1900 to 1300 BCE, saw the spread of Harappan settlement eastward from the Indus River basin to the Ganges-Yamuna River, although none crossed the Ganges to settle its eastern bank. The disintegration of the Harappan civilization, in the early 2nd millennium BC, marked the point when the center of Indian civilization shifted from the Indus basin to the Ganges basin. There may be links between the late Harappan settlement of the Ganges basin and the archaeological culture known as Cemetery Age, the Indo-Aryan people, and the Vedic period. This river is the longest in India. During the early Vedic age of the Rig Veda, the Indus and the Sarasvati River were the major sacred rivers, not the Ganges. But the later three Vedas give much more importance to the Ganges. The Gangetic plain became the center of successive powerful states, from the Maurya Empire to the Mughal Empire. The first European traveler to mention the Ganges was Megasthenes. He did so several times in his work. India, again, possesses many rivers both large and navigable, which, having the sources in the mountains which stretch along the northern frontier, traverse the level country, and not a few of these, after uniting with each other, fall into the river called the Ganges. Now this river, which at its source is 30 stadia broad, flows from north to south, and empties its waters into the ocean, forming the eastern boundary of the Gangetic, a nation which possesses a vast force of the largest-sized elephants. In the rainy season of 1809, the lower channel of the Bhagirathi, leading to Kolkata, had been entirely shut, but in the following year it opened again, and was nearly of the same size with the upper channel. Both, however, suffered a considerable diminution, owing probably to the new communication opened below the Jalangi on the upper channel. In 1951 a water-sharing dispute arose between India and Bangladesh, after India declared its intention to build the Farakka barrage. The original purpose of the barrage, which was completed in 1975, was to divert up to 1,100 cubic meters per second of water from the Ganges to the Bhagirathi Hooghly distributary in order to restore navigability at the port of Kolkata. It was assumed that during the worst dry season the Ganges flow would be around 1,400 to 1,600 cubic meters per second, thus leaving 280 to 420 cubic meters per second for the then East Pakistan. East Pakistan objected and a protracted dispute ensued. In 1996 a 30-year treaty was signed with Bangladesh. The terms of the agreement are complicated, but in essence they state that if the Ganges flow at Farakka was less than 2,000 cubic meters per second, then India and Bangladesh would each receive 50% of the water, with each receiving at least 1,000 cubic meters per second for alternating 10-day periods. However, within a year the flow at Farakka fell to levels far below the historic average, making it impossible to implement the guaranteed sharing of water. In March 1997, flow of the Ganges in Bangladesh dropped to its lowest ever, 180 cubic meters per second. Dry season flows returned to normal levels in the years following, but efforts were made to address the problem. One plan is for another barrage to be built in Bangladesh at Pangsha, west of Dhaka. This barrage would help Bangladesh better utilize its share of the waters of the Ganges.